few minutes talking about organizational culture change. One of the trickiest things possibly you face as manager is if you have to change your culture or if your current culture isn't working for you. So we know that cultures start with their founders, and we reinforce and maintain that culture through managers that we hire in that live those values, that exhibit those behaviors and attitudes that the culture begs for. And then give it a few years, give it a couple of decades, and maybe that culture isn't successful for you anymore. You're not able to meet the demands of the industry or the demands of your customer because your culture is somehow holding you back. Maybe you used to be super process efficient and now you need to be more agile. And so that a lot of that lays in the culture. And so we are talking here on the next couple of slides about culture change and what we can do if we are desiring to change our culture. Keeping in mind that this is a long process, don't give up, stick with it, and see it through. Most changes actually are failures because we quit too early. So we have 6 different steps, and you probably do them linearly, although you don't have to, and you also do all of them. And so these are the puzzle pieces that you need to create the puzzle that is culture change. So, firstly, we have urgency. If anything drags on, people lose interest, they get bored, and they're no longer willing to exert any effort towards the change, right? Because a change, anyways, will require them to give up something, right? There's going to be a cost for the employees to change something. And if they're not seeing the benefits immediately, they're going to be less likely to do it. So we need to think about why we're changing and build that case and that story for our employees. Is it the fact that our vendor is no longer selling their products to us? Is it the fact that the customer needs have changed? Are we about to go out of business because there's so many new competitors in the area? Why do we need to change our culture? Build a business case and then sell it, explain it to the employees quickly. We also want to have change leaders or other key players. Sometimes we call them change agents, sometimes we call them champions. This is the second step. So we want to make sure that we have people that are passionate about the change, that understand it, they internalize it, and then they will keep spreading it throughout the organization with passion and positivity. So we want to make sure that we have a vision for where we are going, what are we going to do, and what are the factors, right, additional with the vision that will influence us in how we're getting things done. So the vision is one important factor, and then you have the leadership, the communication around the vision, the plan for it, right? And you write your vision and mission statement. All these things have to be done. And we do talk about vision and mission statements and planning in other videos on this channel. So if you have a hard time finding them, just shoot me a comment and I'll help you locate, or you can search for them yourself. Clearly, we look to our CEO and his or her team in terms of our C-suite managers, executives in terms of what they're doing. What are they focusing on? What are their behaviors? Where are they spending their time? And we follow with that. So if we have the right people in the right spot for this change, they will for sure make sure that we see where we need to go. It might be that we actually have employees and managers who are barriers to the change. They're resistant, they don't want to do it. And if they're in key positions, meaning you actually need support for the change in the position they are, maybe you actually have to consider removing them. So if you're in an organization where you have a couple of outspoken employees, powerful employees, or high-ranking managers, and this is a change that you believe in that has to be done, one option is to remove those who are resistant beyond usefulness. Some resistance is good. Again, this is also talked about in a different video. This video solely focused on how the 6 steps of changing. And of course, every bullet point here could be a book in and of itself. Role modeling, right? What are you talking about? What kind of actions are you exhibiting? Our employees do look to us as managers and as leaders, and they modify their own to make sure that they fit into the organization. So as high ranking leaders, you must model the behaviors that you want to see. We want to make sure that employees understand the expectation of what is changing and why we're changing. Because if this happens, then it's going to trickle down all the way to the lower levels of the organization. And they will see that we are consistent in our behaviors and in our communications. And then we're going to head on to the next 3 sets of how do we handle culture change. The 4th one is training. Most organizations have some sort of training. And if we are wanting to change our culture so that it suits us better and makes us more successful, we might want to incorporate some well crafted training programs into that. Say that you are a customer oriented organization. You get feedback from your customers that the frontline staff doesn't seem caring or empathetic with them, you know? And so you are saying that this is something that's really impeding you. You're not getting as many service sales, and customers are walking away from your business not feeling super thrilled about the service that they just received. So you might want to incorporate some training that focuses on EQ, right? How do we manage our emotions? How do we recognize our emotions? How do we recognize emotions in other people? And how do we manage that? You might want to focus on empathy. You might want to focus on the user experience, right? So you might implement trainings that actually helps the employee exhibit the behaviors that will make your company successful, right? So experience. Use UX. All right, my handwriting is terrible, but it's essentially just repeating words that is coming out of my mouth. So if it's too difficult to read, apologies. Reward systems, very powerful. Number 5. So what we pay attention to in organizations, what we measure and what we then reward get a lot of attention. So if you know that getting onto a certain training program gets you visibility, which then gets you promotion, that is a reward. That training program is a reward that people would want to go after. And that might be something that is a positive thing, but it might also be a different thing that is a negative for your organization. For instance, if you're running a sales organization and you have a commission-based incentive structure, your salespeople might be very competitive, very aggressive, which will have one set of behaviors with the customer, right? They're going to flood the customer, they're going to talk to them, they're not going to leave them alone. If you have a straight salary situation, then that gives freedom to your salespeople to talk to the customers in a more calm, paced, patient way. So the way we actually use our reward system to guide behaviors is something that we really need to think about as managers. So if your reward system is guiding behaviors in a manner that's not positive, that is not making you successful, you might want to consider changing the reward system and rewarding those actions that will help you be more successful. And of course, we're going to create new stories and new symbols. These are the visible things. In another video on this channel, we are talking about visible factors of the organization, such as language, physical buildings, etc. So if you're interested in that, peep it. But for here, right, we are changing the stories and the symbols and exchanging them for things that will signify the new, right? So if we used to talk about efficiencies, about how we are making things fast, we might want to start talking about quality and the user experience and the customer experience. So you want to make sure that you address the things that are in the future that you need from your employees in the future. That wraps it for how we actually do culture change. Wish you well and see you soon.